means that high on the minds of many people in this country today, more so every day, is this issue of what we're doing in the Middle East. And they asked me what I would do when I was in one of the debates. You know, what is your position? How are you supposed to handle this? And you know, rather than making it complex and deciding what you do on day 1, day 6, day 15, or 2 weeks, 2 months, my simple explanation of what we ought to do is we just marched in, we ought to just march home. The war is an undeclared war. The war is has been fought under false pretenses. The things that we were told were absolutely wrong. Some people call them lies. Still, a large number of American people believe that we're in Iraq because of 9/11. And 9/11, the Iraqis and Saddam Hussein had nothing to do with 9/11, yet that was used as an excuse because there was a desire to go there from the very beginning. Matter of fact, it was the previous administration in 1998 that passed the Iraq Liberation Act that said, we will have regime change. That is when I started speaking out against the coming war as early as 1998. And yet now, it was related to 9/11 and weapons of mass destruction, and our national security depended on it. The tragedy is the resolution that was passed and transferred the power and the authority and responsibility for the Congress to the President said that there were 2 reasons why we had to go into Iraq. One, our national security was threatened, which wasn't so. And the other reason that not many people talk about that even is more offensive, the Congress gave the President the authority to go into war if he felt like it to enforce UN resolutions. We should never go to war for UN resolutions. Never. Some people honestly say that it's for oil. I think not too long ago, Alan Greenspan wrote a book. That's what he said. The real reason we're over there is for oil. And just this past week, Senator McCain said, and he had to back away and tried to get away from it, but there's no way. He said, if they just do what he says, we wouldn't have to fight any more of these wars for oil. Well, that's as long as everybody obeys and does what we tell them. We have only had to give our people around the world 2 choices. One, we go to them and we say, we want you to do this, this, and this. And if you don't do it, we're going to bomb you. Then the other group, they say, okay, you do this, and they do it. We end up giving them money. I say, let's have a third option. Let's talk to people. Let's travel and trade with people. Let's not fight with people. The amount of money that we as taxpayers have to pay to send our dollars and our planes and our bombs over to the Middle East and other parts of the world. And in these unconstitutional, undeclared wars, we start bombing. A lot of infrastructure gets broken up. And then our government says, oh, that's too bad, we've done that. So then they come back and they tax us again. We blow up their bridges, then they tax us again to rebuild the bridges. And yet, our own bridges, what's happening? They're falling down. I say, let's take care of our bridges, our stuff here at home. One of the tricks that they use in Washington, or if you're debating this issue, is if you take this position of being opposed to the war, somehow or another, that's supposed to make you unpatriotic and un-American and not supporting the troops. And they do this constantly. And one thing that I believe we have achieved in this campaign is making a lot more people feel comfortable knowing full well that you can take a position of being strong for America, strong national defense, and against aggressive wars. There was one statistic that I was very pleased with that was reiterated again today. It was the donations that have come from active military personnel. And lo and behold, Get Switch campaign got more donations than all the rest put together. It's our campaign. But there's a lot of reasons why foreign policy is important. It's important that we don't go to war without declarations. It's important we don't go to war under UN resolutions. It's important that we don't start wars and a lot of needless killing goes on. But there's also the issue of the economics of war. We have been taught too often in our schools, and it still lingers in some of our institutions, that the Depression ended with World War II. And that just isn't true. I mean, I remember World War II and things were very depressed. Actually, economic conditions were worse in World War II. The Depression ended after World War II. War is never an economic benefit. It is always an economic negative. That doesn't mean that sometimes war is not necessary in order to defend our country. There's always an economic cost. But some concede that we went to the Middle East to protect our oil. And yet, what has happened since we started the war 5 years ago? Oil was $27 a barrel back then. Today it's 117 plus. So I would say they haven't done a very good job in protecting oil. You know, and the other thing that they said, those who have been reassuring us that it's okay to go and wouldn't cost that much, and Larry Lindsey, who said it would cost a couple $100 million, you know, he got fired for saying that. And the neocon said, nope, we have to do it for all these grandiose reasons. It won't cost anything. Because we're going to go in there, and it's going to be a cakewalk, and we're going to pay for the whole thing with their oil. And they're the ones now who say that if we leave, we're going to have problems. I would say, why listen to those who gave us such bad advice? Listen to them about the advice about whether or not we should leave. Economically, our foreign policy is a big burden to us, and it offers us an opportunity because it's much easier to cut overseas spending than it is to go after some of our domestic programs. Even if the domestic program technically isn't, you know, proper, and we should eventually get rid of it, you don't start on children's health care, you know, to nickel and dime and pretend we're cutting. We're spending $1 trillion a year overseas to maintain our empire. And it's time we quit it, because it will come to an end. The Soviet system collapsed for economic reasons, not because we beat them militarily. So we can save a lot of money. And I don't mean just bringing our troops home from the Middle East. It's time we brought our troops home from Japan, Korea, and Europe. Convinced we would be stronger for our national defense. We'd have less enemies. I believe sincerely there'd be less threat of terrorism, and it would be a way to balance the budget and restore some confidence to the dollar. If we immediately announced that we were moving out of there, no longer threatening the Iranians with bombing and invading them, and bring the troops home, I think the oil prices would drop just for psychological reasons, and the dollar would go up in value, especially if we got the budget down to where it's being balanced and nibble away at the deficit. This would be fantastic economic news. At the same time, I think there'd be enough money when we talk about saving hundreds of billions of dollars, where we could still take care of the people who have become dependent for those, their health care and the elderly retired. We can take care of them until we have a better system. But what we need to do is reintroduce the ideas of freedom and responsibility to the next generation. This means that the young people moving into the